impact in the world because it gave its people not the right to be happy, the right to pursue happiness, the right to exhaust your potential. The thing I love the most about this country is I wake up every day and I go, as long as I'm still breathing, the game ain't over. Hey folks, I hope you really enjoyed watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, consider making a tax-deductible donation. God bless.
Civil servants in Singapore are dogs to the PAP ruling regime. There is no question about it. Yes, of course. Some of you will say the civil service is supposed to be independent, neutral, non-partisan, not siding any one side. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? The civil service is part of the government, and the government is currently run, the executive branch, by the ruling party, and the ruling party we know is the PAP. So the civil service works for the government whether it likes it or not. It works for the PAP ruling government whether or not it likes it. It cannot choose. And I do agree with you that they are supposed to be non-partisan, neutral, independent. I do fully agree with that. But take note, they should. But are they? Not casting any aspersions without evidence, not casting any doubts on any individual, just saying in general, who do they work for, and do they dare to really be neutral and independent when they need to be? Not saying they dare not, but just saying we have not seen examples of that. Is it truly independent when your election department is under the Prime Minister's office? Is it truly independence when your so many things are under the Prime Minister? I mean, let's have a look. Prime Minister's office. Let's see what they have in there. The elections department that decides, not decides, but that runs and manages the running of the elections under the PMO. It is not independent of the government because PMO is government, the highest office in fact. The CPIB, the anti-corruption body, Central, what does P stand for? And how do I search for what offices are under? About Us, maybe it's under About Us. Agencies under the PMO, okay. PMO, you have CPIB, Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, ELD, Elections Department. You have the National Research Foundation, the National Security Coordination Secretariat, Public Service Division. Yeah, public service is very independent. It's under the PMO. Under the PSD, you have the CSC, which is the Civil Service College, is under the PMO. Very, very neutral, very non-partisan. The Prime Minister is not part of a political party. Think about it. SNDGO, Smart Nation and Digital Government Office. GovTech. Someone's son is in GovTech. Government Technology Agency of Singapore. SG, Strategy Group. What strategy? What strategy? The strategy group in the Prime Minister's office drives whole of government strategic planning, and partners government agencies on policy development. It identifies key priorities and emerging issues over the medium to long term, such as population and climate change. We are going to spend billions on climate change because our shoreline is, disappearing. Major crisis. It influences strategic resource allocation and catalyzes new functions and capabilities in order to deliver policies that are in the long-term interest of Singapore. Under the PMO, neutral, very independent, very non-partisan, very. The Prime Minister doesn't have a political party. MAS is under the PMO. This is new to me. Not under the Ministry of Finance, but under the Prime Minister's office. Very independent. MOF, MAS. MOF, not together. Very independent. MAS, established 1st January 1971 by the enactment of the MAS Act. MAS's mission is to promote sustained and non-inflationary growth of the economy. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Yeah. PMO. Very independent. Elections under the PMO, the CPIB under the PMO, the PSD, Public Service Division under the PMO, MAS under the PMO, SG, Strategic Group under the PMO. Very neutral, my friends. Very. So now let's go back and talk about our civil servants. As an ex-civil servant myself, I think I am qualified to talk a little bit about the civil service. Not to badmouth it, not to leak some secrets and confidential information from my time over there, but to give my take, an objective and non-biased, hopefully, take on how the civil service is run and whether I think we can trust them to be custodians of our government system that is neutral, unbiased. Now, the government is not a political party. The government is the government. The government runs operations. We have ministries, and under ministries we have stat boards. Under stat boards, apart from stat boards, we have departments, divisions, blah, blah, blah. They do not wake up every day listening to some PAP music or PAP songs or pledge allegiance to the PAP. We are, after all, not a communist nation like North Korea or China, where they have to download the Mao Zedong, now it's Xi Jinping's thought app. No, we don't do that. We don't do that. However, we still have a leader. We have a leader called Lee Hsien Loong. He is the Prime Minister, and as the head of government, I think he still sets the direction, and not in a way like a dictator like Mao Zedong or Xi Jinping, but you can see his power given by the electors of Singapore as the kind of power that a Prime Minister of, for example, the UK might have, definitely, right? Or something maybe like what the US President has, right? The only thing that is different is that maybe in those countries, certain institutions are really independent, and although the Prime Minister or the President has super huge powers, they cannot do anything they want, and they need to work within certain boundaries that maybe, just maybe, countries like ours do not need to work around some very strict boundaries. So, freedom and democracy is very essentially to restrict the power of the leaders, to ensure that the people have the right, in the first place, have the right to vote for the government they want in a free and fair election, meaning everyone has the same chance and same right to stand for election, and given the same chances to reach out to the voters to spread the message. I mean, subject to the amount of financial resources they have, with a media that is free-willing, that means not just talking the story of one side, the narrative of one side. You have various medias talking various talking points. And then, not only that, that this government, these leaders that are elected are also still limited by the constitution, by certain laws that guard against abuse of power, abuse, violations of human rights, etc., etc. So you will need to think twice before doing something illegal in the definition of the democratic law. I hope that is clear enough. I can say it again if it's not clear. So, power to the people. Because number one, you're able to elect who you want in a free and fair election, which must include, in fact, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom of the press. And number two, even when you are elected, you are still bound by laws that guard against violations of human rights, violations of this and that, and you cannot simply just do anything you want. Okay, Singapore. That I just explained the ideal situation. Singapore situation. Surely we can't say we have a free and fair electoral system. Surely we can't. And the elections department being under the Prime Minister's office, the civil servants are supposed to work in a neutral manner. They cannot tell you who to vote when you walk into the voting booth. They cannot mark for you on your ballot paper your choice for who shall govern the country or represent them in that constituency. Their only role in the election is to make sure you cast your votes properly, that everyone only casts their votes one time, that no illegal voter votes, that all legal eligible voters vote, and to mark out those who did not exercise their voting right as well as duty, so that they do not get to vote the next time unless they pay a penalty of $50. It was increased from $5. Unless you have a valid reason, for example, you were overseas. I trust, as a civil servant, I trust that they are all very capable people. They do not fool around. They do not dare to, at least openly or publicly, be biased towards one side or against another side, whether it's the PAP or the opposition. I do not expect any civil servant to I mean, you can display your public support for a party, but not inside the voting booth, of course, not inside the polling station, of course, right? In your everyday life, you talk to your friends. I mean, of course, there are guidelines on that, but if you ask me, I'm okay with them having views, and they are humans too, right? And they are entitled to support PAP. They are entitled. I mean, it's not wrong, right? You can't say, oh, you support PAP, it's wrong, or oh, you support Workers' Party, is wrong. They have voting rights too, unless you are telling me civil servants can't vote, right? If civil servants can vote, then they can have a voice and they can have a stand. Just that in public areas of service, they need to remain neutral and, as much as possible, not express their political opinion. And I think, particularly in the case of running the elections, they need to be held to a very high standard of neutrality. They cannot be seen to be welcoming the PAP candidates in a joyful and cheerful manner, and then when it comes to opposition candidates, stay outside. Yeah? We are going to lodge complaints. We are going to scrutinize, and we are going to be very, very critical if that happens, because we are not supposed to, simply. Elections aside, civil servants do work for the government, and in the context of Singapore, they do not really have a say in how things are run. They do not get to choose how things are done. For good reason. I mean, you're a government, there's bound to be some bureaucracy. You ought to listen to your superiors. You ought not to just do whatever you like, right? But for certain things, the restrictions can be quite severe. And we know of ridiculous cases of civil servants being dismissed just based on very, very minor so-called offenses, or warned or given warning just because they did not toe the line in a very minor way. Is that real neutrality? Because real neutrality would mean you penalize both sides of the spectrum, not just one side. No, you don't. You should not be getting wary just because the opposing side, gets more airtime, and then you don't pin people down when you are doing PAP propaganda. That's not neutrality. Although they will hide behind this, we are working for the ruling government, right? So you see, they will always hide behind it. So there is no, in fact, they are not secretive about this, my dear friends. We can say all we can about neutrality, but they need not display the PAP logo, but just by repeating certain ministry talk points, they are already doing PAP a favor, in a sense that its ruling party messages gets passed down, and worse, in the name of a neutral organization, in the name of neutrality, in the name of government, not political party. In a real neutral situation, are we very sure? Okay, so I mean, of course, once you're the ruling party, you get a little bit of reign, right? After all, people elected you. You are the voice, and if ministry were to speak the government voice, it wouldn't be speaking the opposition's voice, right? It's definitely speaking the ruling government's voice. There's nothing wrong about that. There's nothing sinister about that. But then I'm just saying that in Singapore system, and the fact that we have this long-running political hegemony for so long, then there's bound to be the sense that things are not fully neutral, although neutral in a professional way, but they're not neutral in a real way, right? In a realistic way. And as I have said, coupled with our non-free and non-fair electoral system situation, it just keeps the PAP in power by means of all this, the indoctrination in schools, the indoctrination in the media, and whatnot. So by being a part of this system, you are effectively, whether you like it or not, and whether you know it or not, or whether you are willingly doing it or not, you are effectively helping to maintain the system. And by pushing its messages, you are a part, right, of this keeping PAP in power. So let's not be let's not try to escape from that fact. But I call upon everyone to have an independent thinking and voice, and to resist being a dog of the PAP. You know who you are, and as I have said, whether you like it or not, you're part of the system. So good luck.